I know there's absolutely no reason it should be taking me this long to make this damn video, but here we Hi friends, my name is Rain. Welcome back to my channel. Now this is the second time I'm making this video. Actually no, it's the third time I'm making this video. I started it quite literally 2 seconds ago, stopped it because I realized I didn't have my physical books with me, and so here we are. This week has been extremely busy for me, so I'm so sorry if you guys end up getting this late. I'm producing my second film this weekend, and it's been nothing but text messages, emails, paperwork, shopping, budgets, the whole shebang. I am tired, but I'm excited to get this film out this weekend. It'll be my last second year film that I am on for the year, and then I'm free, and then I can just focus on all of my liberal arts courses and my homework and my finals, and I can move on and I can read more books. So this video today is actually going to be a wrap-up of all the books that I read in February and March. February and March because in March I only read 2 books. However, in February I read 6. So I wanted to be able to talk about all 8 books with you guys. In February I read 3 nonfiction books and 3 fiction books, which is so out of my comfort zone, but because 2 of the books were for an African American lit course of mine, the other nonfiction was just because I'm trying to make an effort to read nonfiction, and so I've really been making an effort to read the nonfiction on my shelves, and it took me so long to finish the book that we're about to talk about later, but I'm really excited for us to go ahead and dive in. In March I read 2 books, and both of them were fiction books. I of course listened to a lot of audiobooks over those 2 months, and I think that makes up most of the reading that I have done so far this year, but I think the last time I checked my Storygraph, it was about a 50-50 when it comes to the print books that I've read versus the audiobooks that I've read, which is of course going to change because the only time I have time to read anymore is when I'm doing something while listening to an audiobook. So we'll go ahead and see whether that changes in the future, but that's for another time, that's for another video. Let's just go ahead and get started with the books that I read in February. The first book that I read in February was Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Young, and this is a YA fantasy. Now this series is about a fantasy world where the gods have kind of gifted certain people with these demon-like features and capabilities, that being caste system. If you are a paper caste, you are full human. If you are a steel or moon caste, you have certain animal capabilities and physicalities to you, such as if you were a steel deer caste, you might have a few physical features of a deer, like the ears or certain parts of your body. If you are a moon caste, you have certain magical capability and like other in very strong non-human capabilities that comes with it. For instance, the king being, I believe, like a bull moon cast, so he has horns and arms and like is like 7 feet tall and is like really crazy and strong. Now this series is following Lay and her journey from being kidnapped from her home as a paper caste to taken to the castle with the king with 8 other girls who are also paper caste, and they are known as paper girls, and they essentially are the sort of prostitutes of the king. And so this series heavily talks and discusses sexual assault and sexual abuse, so please check the trigger warnings before you read this book or this series. However, I think these are amazing topics in violence against women to speak about, and I think putting it in a fantasy setting in the way that it was done so well and very tastefully. So I definitely think that this is a good series. Now for the second book, I gave it 4 stars. I think that this book did not suffer from middle book syndrome at all when it comes to, you know, series trilogies and things. It was quite action-packed the entire time. Now some people might be asking, okay, well, if you liked it so much, why did you give it 4 stars? I think my biggest gripe with this series, unfortunately, is the romance. Now this is also a queer fantasy story because Lay is a lesbian and so is her partner Ren. However, my biggest issue is that it feels so intensely, especially within the second book and the third book. I can kind of get into the romance within the first book, but by the time you get to those second and third books, my difficulty is it really does feel like the author kind of took the 2 queer people in the room and put them together. And I don't like really say that lightly. I say that because if you look at a lot of their dynamics, I feel like there's certain bits and pieces of them that don't really fit or mesh together in a way that I think would kind of bring to life a good romance, and it just makes it difficult to root for their romance in its entirety because I don't really believe it. It's hard to like read it without feeling like, yeah, they were just kind of both there, queer, and available, and so they put each other together. So the second book that I read in the month of February was The Narrative of Frederick Douglass by Frederick Douglass himself. Now, this was my first nonfiction that I read in the month of February for my African American Lit course, and this is essentially Frederick Douglass telling the story of his life within the slave trade from a young age to how he escaped. And I think that this is an extremely raw, very heart-wrenching, gut-punching, all of the brutal details. He doesn't leave a single thing out when he talks about the horrors of racism and the oppression of Black people. He talks about so many important topics, such as the purposeful miseducation of Black people and purposefully keeping Black people uneducated, because he himself had educated himself within the privacy of anywhere that he could get it without his slave owner or his slave owner's wife trying to figure it out. Because at the end of the day, one of the big things when it came to not wanting to educate Black people was that if they were educated, knowledge is power, and they would realize that the situation they were in was unjust, brutal, and quite frankly disgusting. It really brings that to light, as well as some other topics such as religious hypocrisy when it comes to this idea of a lot of white slave owners taking the Bible and rationalizing certain things from the Bible to explain the kind of violence that they inflict on Black people. I think that there are so many parts of this book that are very well done, and there's details that he kind of talks about within the history of the slave trade, the Underground Railroad and stuff, and very interesting takes that I think are something to chew on and have knowledge of. This book is public domain. I'm sure you could find a PDF of it if you just looked it up. I know that's how my teacher was able to provide the story to us. If you are thinking of reading it, I highly recommend you get the chance to read it, because it is such a phenomenal book. And the third book that I read in the month of February was Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs, under the pseudonym Linda Brent. This is also public domain. I actually found an audiobook version on YouTube. Actually, I didn't find it, my girlfriend found it. And this book is very similar to The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. However, this is discussing Harriet Jacobs' life from a young age all the way to her freedom as a Black woman within slavery, which is a very different parallel from Frederick Douglass's experience, because the main reason she needed to escape was because she was gonna end up within a sexually abusive relationship with her slave owner, who literally spent decades trying to hunt her down when she did run away. This one was very detailed about her escape process and how she managed to finally escape slavery and become free, which is very different from Frederick Douglass, because he doesn't reveal how he escaped. He just tells us that he escaped, and that was for his safety. And when Harriet Jacobs was able to be free and write this book, she was able to, explain in great detail how it was that she was able to escape. And it talks about a lot of things, such as motherhood within the realm of slavery, and what you're really willing to do to gain your freedom, and how important it is to shed light on the fact that Black women within the slave trade had a very different experience because of the sexual abuse and sexualization of Black women throughout history. And I think that this book is so amazing. You should definitely check it out if you get the chance. The audiobook is quite lovely on YouTube, and you can listen to it on double speed as well if that's your vibe, because I know for sure that's my vibe, and I definitely think you should check it out. This was another 5-star read for me. Okay, and the third book that I read in February that is now going to be a personal favorite book of mine, like within one of my favorite books of all time, is Uncle Tom's Children by Richard Wright. Now this book follows 5 fictional short stories that Richard Wright has written, including an excerpt of his own experience during Jim Crow. All of these stories take place post-slavery during the throes of Jim Crow, and each story has its own very heartbreaking, violent, and gut-wrenching themes that they deal with on their own, going from young Black boys to adult Black men with families and Black women. And it just kind of talks about how the different violences of Jim Crow affect all of them, and how no one was really safe from Jim Crow if you were a Black person growing up in the United States. This book is so well written. The stories are so beautiful. I literally cannot say enough good things about this book. I personally, while I definitely have favorite short stories, every single one of these stories is so well done and so beautiful, and I cannot get enough of the writing style that Richard Wright has, and he just did a really good job encompassing a Jim Crow experience through fiction, and I cannot recommend this book enough. I beg of you, please read this damn book. The fifth book that I ended up reading in the month of February was A Show for Two by Tasha Bouillon. What's really interesting about this book is that it's actually inspired by the fact that Tom Holland ended up going to a New York tech school, tech high school, or kind of like STEM high school in order to gain a high school experience that he could use to better his ability as an actor when he was going to be cast in Spider-Man. And this one kind of does the exact same thing and tweaks it a little bit. So essentially we're following Mina, who was born and raised in New York and wants nothing more than to go across the country to UCLA to study filmmaking and get away from her mentally abusive parents who are extremely controlling and make everything in her life, quite frankly, very, very miserable. Runs into a guy named Emmett, who she ends up having a very horrible run-in with, and they kind of become rivals, but she later learns that he is an indie actor that is actually going to their school undercover to experience high school so he can better be fit for his role in a new upcoming superhero movie. And they kind of find ways to help each other through their rivalry in order to get what they want. And what Mina wants is for her film club to have a celebrity star within the film that they could use to help win this film competition that they've tried for every single year and never won because of all of the other celebrity stars that are within other films that always win. And Emmett is also a photographer on the side, and he wants to be able to win this photography competition, but he knows nothing about New York, and so he has Mina help him tour New York so that way he can take photos for this photography competition in order to win it. And what I like about this book is the romance has such an amazing payoff. The pacing of this romance is so well done, and I love how slow it is. And even if it's a little bit messy, it's like high school messy, so it makes sense, and it still makes the payoff absolutely worth it in the end when these two get together, which is not a spoiler. It's a romance novel. What I was having such a hard time with this book is, and this is more of a personal thing, there's really no resolution with the parents. Now, as I said before, Mina does not have a great relationship with her parents. They are quite mentally abusive, controlling, and quite frankly very angry people that do not respect Mina or her sister at all for being their own people. And there is no strict resolution to that relationship. Now, I have learned that it definitely has something to do with the own author's personal life that they're kind of touching on, and so there's not really much I can say in that realm. And looking back on it now, it definitely is okay that there is no strict resolution to the end of that relationship with her parents and that nothing is ever really resolved. I think for me, I'm just very much like a let's resolve it kind of girly, so I kind of wanted to see that, and I was just a little disappointed that we didn't really get more of a back and forth or a conversation between the parents or anything really that kind of showcases a discussion about Mina's experience being their daughter. However, I'm not within the community that Mina is in when it comes to background, so really anything that I say kind of has to just be taken with a grain of salt. The other issue that I had was Mina was incredibly antagonized throughout the book for wanting to move across the country and go to film school at UCLA, and a lot of her friends and family were all saying that she's being horrible because she has made this film competition, this want to get into UCLA, her entire life. And everyone was saying that she's been neglecting everybody else, that she's not being a good friend, that she's not being a good sister because she is so focused on getting into college and getting into this film and winning this film competition, which to me makes literally no sense, because if you've ever been in high school and applying to college and you're trying to go through that process, it absolutely 110% does kind of take up your entire life and your heart and your soul. And where a lot of people within the book tried to villainize Mina for not caring about anything else, I personally just found that she was extremely passionate, so to me it made no sense that she was being villainized throughout the story for wanting that for herself and wanting so badly to get it and focusing so heavily on it. And I think the resolution to that whole argument and struggle throughout the book was not very well done, and I personally just didn't enjoy that part of the story. That's not to say that this isn't a good book. I still rated it 4 stars and I would still recommend it. It's cutesy, it's film related, which hello. The 6th and final book that I read in the month of February was Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. And if you can see here, I had a lot of thoughts. I have been reading this book since October, and I annotated this entire book to hell. It's 511 pages. It is literally just one giant historical timeline of Black experience in America, all the way from the beginnings of fucking Aristotle to the Obama administration. And it kind of talks about how many things connected historically to lead into a lot of the racist rhetoric and racial oppression and systematic racism that America experiences when it comes to the Black experience. And I think that it is so encompassing and so well done, and there is so much information jam-packed into this damn book that I can't even begin to explain to you how I feel, other than I think everybody should read it. Again, I spent 4 months reading this. It is a nonfiction. It is definitely out of my comfort zone, but I cannot feel prouder of myself for reading this damn thing. Like, literally, there's so much information jam-packed into this book that the index itself is, like, the book is 511 pages long. And because the index and all of the notes from each chapter is so long, it literally ends at page 6, no, not 6, okay. It ends at page 581 or 582. Like, there is so much information jam-packed into this book that you are going to get something out of it no matter how much of it you read, even if it's just a little bit. But what I also love about this book is to keep everything kind of concise and controlled. It follows this information through the point of views of different historical figures. The first one being Cotton Mather, the second one being Thomas Jefferson. We also get to hear from William Lloyd Garrison, we talk about W.E.B. Du Bois, and we get the point of view of Angela Davis. And so there are historical figures that we follow throughout this saga of information when it comes to the Black experience and the racial Black experience in America. And it does a really good job kind of confining it without overwhelming a reader with all of the information that they're given. And I have annotated this book so much. In every other thing that I have written, there was no concise annotation process that I had for this book because I just wanted to annotate literally everything, and I went through so many sticky tabs annotating this book because I wasn't color coding my tabs at all, and I was just putting them places because I didn't really know how to categorize any of my annotations. I just wanted to get them out of my brain. I think that this book is absolutely amazing. It was another 5-star for February. I think almost all of my books for February were 5 stars, which is so amazing. I can't remember the last time I had such a good 5-star reading month, but I cannot recommend this book enough. If you think that you can handle it, you should go for it, because I was so freaked out when I picked up this book. I was like, there's no fucking way. There's absolutely no way I'm gonna do this, and I did, and I feel so accomplished, and I have so much information stored in my brain now that I am literally willing to dump on people at any given moment. So I highly recommend that you pick up this book if you are at all thinking about it. It is so good. Now, moving on to March. The first book that I read in the month of March was Passing by Nella Larson, and I don't really know how to describe this book other than my Goodreads review and my Storygraph review, which was simply the way that this book had me gobsmacked and gagged. Like, this book is following the point of view of Irene, who ends up reconnecting with a childhood friend of hers, Claire. Now, both of these women are light-skinned Black women who both have the ability to pass as white women. The difference is Irene never decided to pass as a white woman within her life. She does so occasionally to get into taxis and hotels and restaurants and things at her leisure. However, Claire, her friend, fully passed as a white woman, married a racist white man, and had a light-skinned mixed baby, and literally just went the whole 9 yards. However, this book kind of escalates when Irene notices that Claire has a way of kind of capturing the hearts of many other people around her, and everyone is just drawn to her as a human being, and she starts to suspect that her husband is cheating on her with Claire, which kind of brings her into this downward spiral on top of this understanding of whether she needs to protect her own life or protect another Black woman from racism, and there's a lot of like discussions of what do you do like when you're put in a situation where you could absolutely out someone as a Black person that is passing. Is it right? It's gonna be dangerous. There is a lot of danger with the lifestyle that Claire has chosen, and it talks about, you know, more of that Jim Crow racist Black experience within such a tiny book. And the ending is so shocking, but it brought up so many great conversations within my class. So if you guys ever pick up this book, I absolutely want to have a conversation about all of the themes and topics kind of weaved into it. I gave it 3.75 stars because as much as I really liked it, I could honestly raise it to a 4-star. As much as I did like this book, I think it was even just a little bit longer than it needed to be, because all of those themes and topics interwoven within the book were so well done. I just think that there was a very long drag of Irene kind of holding on to this information, and we just kind of sit in it with the author, and the author just kind of continues to talk in circles about what Irene is going to do when she finds out that she thinks her husband is cheating on her with Claire. And so that was my only really gripe with it. It was quite slow in the middle. It dragged quite a bit, and so I think that this book could have been even shorter, but I think that there are so many topics that this book covers in such a small span of time. I read it in like 2 days. Please go read Passing. It's so good. Alright, and the last book that I ended up finishing in the month of March was Girls of Fate and Fury by Natasha Young, and this is the final installment of the Girls of Paper and Fire series. Unfortunately, I really did not like the last book as much as I liked the first and the second book. I did find that I could kind of get behind the romance between Ren and Lei a little bit more, but I think where the second book was completely action-packed and constantly was tense and had you going from beginning to end, the last book dragged, bro. I ended up giving it a 3.75 stars, which is really unfortunate. I wanted to enjoy, like, and fully enjoy the last book of this series, but it just felt too slow for me. And again, I think the series covers a lot of very heavily and prevalent topics when it comes to violence against women and sexual assault, but I just think that there were a lot of things that, to me personally, especially towards the end, didn't really make a lot of sense, which is really unfortunate because I really wanted to like the last book of this series, especially because I've been reading it for quite some time, but it just didn't do it for me. Take with that what you will. I still think that this is going to be a great series for other people. I just don't think it was for me. But that is the last book, and that is the end of this video. This is so far a 27-minute long video. I pray for a future me that has to edit this. I don't even know when I'm going to have time to edit this. You'll probably get it sometime next week. You'll probably get 2 videos next week because I simply do not have time to do any editing as of late, which, what can you do? But thank you guys so much for watching. It's been such an amazing time seeing you guys comment on my booktube newbie tag and getting to know all of you. You guys are so sweet, and I honestly, where a 16-year-old me would have kind of gotten nervous by the fact that other people want to engage in my content, it just makes me want to keep continuing to make even more content, and I seriously can't thank you guys enough for the support. It's been so fun just being able to make these videos again and being able to tell my friends that I'm making these videos and getting excited with other people and knowing that I get to just sit down and talk about books. I cannot thank you enough, seriously. But that's gonna be the end of the video, so all of my social media is gonna be linked down in the description below, and do not forget that I am also a writer. I am a professional writer on Fiverr. I do ghostwriting and beta reading and short story writing if you simply want a short story, and I also have a blog that I maybe potentially will update one of these days, but will. Sorry guys, my roommate came back and so I had to cut that video really short, but anyway, thank you guys so much. I'm gonna stop this video here. Bye!